Hi, EDU 610 students. This is Professor Jennifer Steele again at American University. And today we're tackling topic 7 in Microsoft Excel, where we're focusing on how to create a time series graph with 2 axes. So last time in topic 6, we created clustered bar graphs where each bar was an average student test score in reading and math for public and private schools. So you have 2 types of bars in each cluster. This time we're doing, essentially we're doing line graphs. So instead of bar graphs, we're doing line graphs with lines and markers, and our horizontal axis, our x-axis, is going to be time, and we're actually going to have 2 vertical axes, one on the left and one on the right. And so we're using an example from the Gail Johnson's textbook, Research Methods for Public Administrators, which has a section where she talks about gross domestic product and its relation to public debt. And so that's what we're going to be graphing those things today. And let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, we're going to share screen 1. So, okay. So let me pull this over here. Okay. So now we have a description of the GDP debt over time data, and these data extend from the year 1929, so the year of the famous stock market crash that preceded the Great Depression of the 30s, all the way up to the year 2015. These are data that I pulled from the U.S. Department of Commerce and the Council of Economic Advisors, and then I put them together in one data set. The variables also include gross domestic product in $1 billion. These are unadjusted for inflation. Then we have GDP real in billions of dollars, and these are inflation adjusted. Then we have public debt, which is U.S. debt that is not owed to other governments in billions of dollars. And then we have public debt divided by gross domestic product. So it can be thought of as a percentage or a ratio. And of course, we want public debt divided by, in comparison to gross domestic product, we want that to be low. So let me show you the data. So we have the data here, which column A is years, column B is GDP nominal, column C is GDP real, which means inflation adjusted, column D is public debt. All of these are denominated in billions of dollars, except for E, public debt, which as a share of GDP, which is denominated as a percentage. So we're going to have a line, we're going to end up with a line graph that, as your assignment shows you, looks like this, where years are on the x-axis. We have billions of dollars on the left side y-axis, and we have debt as a percent of GDP on the right side y-axis. And that right side y-axis is only going to apply to the blue line, public debt, with the blue line with hollow square markers, which is public debt as a share of GDP. And ideally, we want that line to be low because we want public debt to be low relative to economic productivity. Okay, so the way that we create this line graph, and what I'm going to show you applies to any line graph, not just to gross domestic product. We're going to first select columns A through E in our data set, and then we're going to go insert, let's see, insert graph, and we're going to choose line graph. So let's see, line 2D line with markers. Okay, and as it reminds you on the assignment, we can always change that later, but we really want a 2-dimensional line with markers. So it's going to be this one right here. Okay, so, and we're gonna, I'm gonna right click that graph and let's see, move chart. I'm gonna right click it and then click move chart so that it will become a new sheet, which is gonna be called, for me, it's called chart 2. Okay, now it looks like this. Only again, as last time, it's kind of hard to read. So I'm gonna go ahead and select the whole chart and then go to this A caret, which increases the font size. So I'm just making these fonts bigger so that I can actually read what I'm doing. Maybe I'll make it a little smaller, but it's right now, it was initially very hard to read. Okay, so now I have a graph that already almost looks like what I want it to be, but it's a little bit wrong. For one thing, the x-axis ranges from 1 to 85 and is not a year, so it's kind of hard to know what it is. So we're in step 2 of the assignment, which says the graph will not look right. The year may be treated as we want the year to not be a data series, which it currently is. It's the blue data series right here. We want year to be the x-axis. So we're going to right click the graph and choose select data. And so when we do that, we're going to delete, we're going to unselect year as one of our data series. And we're going to change our horizontal axis labels to be the year. So we're going to go horizontal category axis labels, edit, and we're going to select our row of data in A. Whoops. So we go back to the data sheet and we select 1929 all the way down to 2015. We go back here and click this little down arrow and then click OK. Okay, so that seems to have worked. We now have years selected as our x-axis, and we have all of these other lines on our y-axis, and they're properly labeled already, which is great. Okay, so we click OK, and now we're getting close to having the graph that we want, but we still have one more problem, which is the public debt as a share of GDP is all the way at the bottom. And that's because it's not scaled on a scale on the current x-axis, y-axis scale of 0 to 20,000. It's scaled on a percentage scale from 0 to 100. So it is lying flat at the bottom when it should be having its own axis. So the way that we address this is in step 3, we're going to select the line public debt as a share of GDP, and then we're going to right click format data series, and we're going to choose to make it a secondary axis, or to give it a secondary axis. Okay, so first I'm clicking the line, that blue line at the bottom, public debt as a share of GDP. I'm making sure that the whole line is selected, and then I'm right clicking and I want to format data series. Okay, so now I have my format data series option pane that pops up, and it says series options, plot series on. So this is under the 3-bar option over here. It says plot series on, and we want to plot it on the secondary axis. So voila, now we have a secondary axis that is denominated from 0 to 120 in percentage points. So now I have a separate axis for public debt as a share of GDP. Okay, so now we've completed step 3. And so now we're going to add axis labels to the to both of the y-axes. And for the left axis, we're going to label it dollar billions. And for the right axis, we're going to label it debt as a share of GDP. And And I don't think we need I don't think that we need a label for year, because I think it's going to be pretty obvious that these are years. So now we want to, so the way that we add these axis labels is we click this little plus right here, or you could go to chart design, add chart element, axis titles. But we're going to just do it with this little plus right here. We're going to do axis titles, and we're going to write over here dollar billions, and over here we're going to write debt as percent of GDP. Okay. We're also going to create a chart title. And the chart title is going to be US GDP and public debt over time. Then step 6 is to make the fonts larger. Now we already did that to some extent, but I think that we could do even more. And then step 7 is going to be to make the markers distinct so that somebody could distinguish them even if they did not have color printing or color vision. So to make the fonts larger, again, we just click the whole graph, and then we go up here to font options. And we're just going to click that A caret to make them a little bit larger. And then we're going to format the data series. So click each data series one by one. So first we'll do debt as a percent of GDP. And we will, not format data point. We want to format data series. That means when we click the line, we have to select the whole line. Oh, there we go. Now the whole thing is selected. Format data series. We're going to go to the paint can, which is where we format the look of the series. We're going to choose marker instead of line. And let's see, to make it similar to our sample, let's choose a hollow square. And then we'll do different looking markers for each line. But for this one, we'll do marker and marker options. Let's do a square. And for the fill type, let's see, how do we make it hollow? No fill, we'll do no fill. Okay. Oh, we accidentally did X's. I wanted to do hollow squares. Okay, marker options. Let's do square. There we go. Okay, so now we have hollow squares for public share debt as a share of GDP. Let's do triangles for real GDP, which is inflation adjusted. We'll do triangles for that. So marker option, triangle. Okay, that looks pretty good. We'll do, it looks like little X's for nominal gross domestic product. So we select nominal gross domestic product, which is the red line. And we go to marker options. We'll choose an X for that. Let's see, where's the X? Oh, I think it's this, but we just choose no fill and it looks like an X. Good. Okay, and then we'll leave the purple line as little circles because that's different from all the other lines. So now all of our lines in the line graph have distinctive markings. So even though they're different colors, we can also distinguish them by the shapes of their markers. And if we wanted, we could even make the markers a little bit larger. So I could go marker options, and I can increase the size so that you can see the markers a little better. Let's see, go 7. And I think that will make it a little easier to distinguish the lines from one another. Okay, so now essentially what we see here is that over time from 1929 to 2013, gross domestic product in inflation adjusted terms grew at an, in most cases, an exponential rate. So it actually grew not linearly, but had an upward curve, which means it was growing quite quickly. But then it leveled off. It started to drop a little bit as we approached the recession of 2008. But then it began to climb again up to 2013. Now, when we look at the one that is not inflation adjusted, we also see it growing very quickly. But part of the reason it was so low at first is that it's not adjusted for inflation, whereas the green line with triangles is inflation adjusted. So it's really a better measure of how gross domestic product or national productivity has changed over time. And then we have public debt in billions of dollars, and we see that until the early 1980s, public debt was really extremely low. Then it began to climb during the 1980s up to the late 90s. Then it started to drop after the late 90s and then begin to climb again sharply in 2001. Now, if you guys know your history, you can probably associate this with different political movements, different wars and international goings on. So 2001 marks the beginning of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. So public debt began to climb at that point and then began to climb more sharply, even or at a greater slope, at a steeper slope with the advent of the recession, did begin to climb. But remember, gross domestic product was also climbing. So in terms of the ratio of public debt to gross domestic product, it was actually surprisingly quite high. Quite high during and after. It began to climb a lot during World War II as money was needed to finance the war. Then it dropped off sharply after the 1940s. So we're talking about debt as a share of national productivity. It actually reached more than 100% in 1946, but then dropped off sharply and then continued to stay fairly low, began to climb again in the 80s, stayed fairly low, dropped again in the 90s, and then began to climb again with the Great Recession, and then the end in 2013. So this is a line graph, with a time series line graph with two y-axes, and I hope that this has been useful. You can always refer back to this video and the other Excel videos as you find yourself working on other Excel projects in this course and in your other courses. And hope you all have a great rest of your day, and thanks for watching.